Welcome everybody to Fish Stripes Live. This is our series prediction for the upcoming series against the Rays at Tropicana Field. It's just the two of us here.
Just the two of us.
I knew you were going to do that. I was hoping you would do that. It's just the two of us. Everybody and their brother and every reporter seems to be up at Tropicana Field for this one. Kevin's going to be on site for us. He'll come in with his press box report at some point. Isaac's there, as well as Daniel Rodriguez. He's there as a fan. Everyone's up there, so it just leaves us. So you're stuck with us. I'm so sorry. We're gonna go through the Rockies series. We're gonna go through that little tiny trade that was made today. We'll go through all the injuries, and then we'll break down the Rays. And of course, just me. I'm Noah. I usually host the Jeopardy stuff, and although this week I'm switching roles.
Yeah, we have Jeopardy this week, and not you hosting it. So, but yeah, this is greatly appreciated. And of course, please fill up the comments of not just Marlins stuff and Rays stuff, but trade deadline stuff. And I see Isaac is giving us a comment, but I mean other people besides Isaac. Please, give us your stuff so that we could go through and could fill up this time. This is only a 2-game series that we're previewing, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it quite as much as we ordinarily would, but it is the Citrus series. And there's some interesting notes that we have on that as well. So yeah, let's just start with the Rockies stuff. Slightly different display that I'm going with this time. We have Kevin coming up pretty soon with our press box report. But going through this one, disappointing series. I think most people would say the Rockies are about as weak an opponent as you could face at this time of year. Non-competitive team, missing a whole lot of pitching, and yet the Marlins only scored 7 total runs in the 3 games, losing 2 out of 3. They needed a walk-off to win that final one, courtesy of Luis Arraez. So I guess if you start at the end, the silver lining is that Arraez is whatever, maybe you could call it somewhat of a mini slump from him coming out of the break. And this was one of his best individual games since then. 2 very big hits in that one and 3 hits overall to salvage the final game. And obviously Luzardo was great at the end otherwise. But I think we should touch on Johnny Cueto as well. What were your thoughts on Johnny Cueto, Noah? You weren't as preoccupied with his rehab assignment as some of us were. From watching him in the minors, it seemed like he was thoroughly cooked. But if people hadn't seen him start a game in a while, I think just about everybody was absolutely floored by how amazing he was.
I think if they don't, if they win that game, we're talking about Johnny Cueto is back basically, but his performance gets overshadowed by the fact that they lost that game because it got blown later on. With Cueto, I was very impressed. 6 innings, only 2 hits, and really it's no earned runs. But the run is charged to him because it was his runner when Stragwa gave up the 3-run homer. But very, very, very impressive, and exactly what the Marlins needed. In this stretch of the season, you need your starting pitching to give you 6 solid innings, and that's what he gave them, and it's exactly what they needed. But it didn't end up working because the bullpen is absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly what you wanted him to do. And he started the 7th inning as well, I think. And then that's when they pulled him with a base runner on. So the 1 run he allowed was actually an inherited run that JT Chagua let cross the plate there. The velo was up. So that part, not totally surprising being that it's a major league setting. There's extra adrenaline running. The shock was the combo of his velo and his commands, and the fact that the ride that he was getting on his fastball up in the zone constantly. The Rockies were swinging underneath it again and again and again. Even Cueto, when he was good last year, like this is not how Cueto did it with the White Sox. He has graduated from this stage of his career. It seems like he's not a hard throwing guy anymore. He's not a power pitcher, even when he was having success last year. That's not the guy that the Marlins signed up for. Yet in this game, they leaned really hard into that particular strategy, and it worked out extremely well. It worked out against a terrible lineup and one that's especially bad on the road. So there'll be a much bigger. Well, first he faces the Tigers, and that's not actually a super hard test either. I guess the real judgment would come probably the start after that against the Phillies. And I mean, I would hope that the Marlins don't let his. I don't want them to be shied away from actually doing what it takes to acquire a real starting pitcher, a more trustworthy guy at the deadline, regardless of what he does. But yeah, still interesting that way. And Luzardo was even better in his outing, career high 115 pitches. But yeah, before we go to Kevin, your thoughts on that? Because you were in the ballpark to see Luzardo do that.
I was very from the get-go. You could tell that he had his good stuff, and he was doing what he does and doing a bit what Cueto does and messing with hitters' timings. There were at least 3 or 4 quick pitches that resulted directly in a strikeout early on in the game. He was filling the zone. He was changing speeds. He was doing everything you need to do to get guys out, and he was just rolling. And when you saw Skip come out to talk to him in near the end of the 7th inning, you're like, uh-oh, is he going to take him out? Or here we go again. But Skip left him out there, and it kind of made you feel like last year when Sandy was left out on the mound for the 9th inning in, I think it was St. Louis. And it's just like one of those where it's your moment, take it, and he took it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Very
right.
impressive from Luzardo.
It was a St. Louis game with Donnie on the road. And this one was a little different where I don't know if Luzardo was fighting to stay in the game quite as adamantly as Sandy was, but this was new territory for him. We have a new article on the site where I ponder exactly where Luzardo stands in the Cy Young race at the moment, because you look around and it's a down year for NL contenders, and his overall package of putting same run prevention as last year, working deeper into games, and the pizzazz that he does it with, the fact that he's piling up those strikeouts, that's going to get attention as well. This year has been kind of exactly what they were hoping for from Luzardo this year. He's even adding a new cutter to his pitch mix. That's a topic for probably the next stream, about him making even mid-season adjustments to get even better. Just one very quick look at the playoff picture now with those 3 games in the rear view. Yesterday, when the Marlins were off, basically every team that they wanted to lose did lose in the wild card race. And now look how satisfying that is, where the top 5 teams in the wild card picture, all exactly 47 losses. It really could not be much closer at this stage of the season. With still about 60 games to go, these teams.
This is fun. For some.
Yeah.
If at the beginning of the season you told me that the Reds, the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, the Giants, and the Phillies would all be tied for all of the wild card spots in almost August, I tell you, you're crazy. But this is exactly what's going on. So we got to see what's going on here, because it's basically crunch time, and the Marlins dropped 8 in a row. But unlike Marlins of yesteryear, they did it at a time where they could drop 8 in a row.
Right.
They had a cushion. The other teams in the race were also dropping games, and they're still in it. So the season's not even close to over.
Yep. As you see, the Cubs and the Padres and the Mets are still floating around there, and we don't know if any of those teams are going to go into a hard sell. Depends kind of what happens this week. But either way, it's about as simple. If you assume that the Marlins are going to hold off ahead of those teams, then it's simply 5 teams for 3 spots, and then you simply have to outplay them at this point. It's a virtual tie with all these other clubs. In a couple of cases, in the Giants and Phillies with like doubled the payroll, and with the D-backs and the Reds, those are teams that are kind of in the same boat as the Marlins, where they came into this year not with ridiculously high expectations or pressures to win. But especially in the Reds case, it looks like they're going to be pretty aggressive at the deadline, shopping for some of the same pieces that the Marlins are in terms of starting pitching. So it's going to be fun to watch. And these are teams that you'll have to keep your eye on basically every single day, because this is as they are as close as you could possibly be. And it's been an interesting shape of the season so far, and it has gotten them just to this point where everybody, it's like a brand new season.
There's just one more thing I want to mention about these teams here is the Brewers, the Reds, the Phillies, the Mets, and even the Braves. The Marlins all have at least one series against all of those teams coming up between now and the end of the season. Some of them, they have 2 series left. They have 2 series against the Brewers. They have a series against the Reds. They've got 1 against the Phillies. I think 2 against the Phillies, actually. They've got 2 against the Mets. They've got the Braves are just always knocking on the door. So those series are going to be crucial to giving yourself some breathing room in this wild card race. Because the Brewers, they're only like a game up on the Reds for the Central, so they're technically also in the wild card race.
Right. Yeah. So you really want to say it's more of 7 teams for 5 spots if you include both the Central and the West going on there. And yeah, this is going to be super fun. And we're during one of the only stretches of the season where the Marlins don't actually play any National League teams. So it's the Rays this midweek, and then obviously the Tigers coming up this weekend. And in Tampa Bay, in Tropicana, specifically St. Petersburg, we have Kevin Barral doing his first road coverage at that ballpark. And you seem pretty impressed with it, Kevin. Yeah, what's your general takeaway from their facilities and the whole setup there?
It's cool. It's cool seeing it in person. Obviously, you see the pictures and you think it's not that good, but it looks cool. I mean, when you look at it in person, you're on the field. It's, I was impressed. And, I spoke to a couple guys on the Rays already, and the press box is amazing. You're super close to the action, and maybe we could pull a quick Zach Campbell and catch a foul ball, but you never know. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, that press box is known for being the most foul balls of any press box in the league.
I should have brought a glove.
All right. Well, let's get in quickly to these injury updates from pregame, where nobody is imminent and nobody new added to the roster yet, but with Avi getting his rehab assignment moved to AAA, with Nardi starting on his rehab assignment and this type of stuff. Yeah, what sticks out to you about the latest round of injury updates?
Max Meyer. I did not expect that one to happen. Thankfully, it doesn't look too bad. It's not anything bad. No structural damage. They did an MRI and all that, so good to see that. I think the other very worrisome and concerning one is Trev, still not throwing. Yeah. That one is extremely concerning. The Jazz one, I didn't see Jazz anywhere on the field, so but I would say, I guess he did hit in the cage. Obviously we saw Tommy Nance threw in a complex game today. The Bender one, obviously, very nice to see that he's kind of getting those bullpens in, kind of to the range that we would expect him to pitch in a normal game. And then Barnes, he's going to be in Connecticut for a couple of weeks with his family recovering from the surgery. So nothing too crazy. Skip did mention that Dane was going through something, but I think it's just, nothing too serious. I know there's been a cold going around. I think we were talking about that. Right. That's why you see Jesus Sanchez in center today. And obviously, because you have John Birdie in left. So that's kind of what Skip went through. He spoke about the complications of playing out in Tropicana, obviously the roof. He's played here before, and then kind of went a little bit into the trade about, today's trade with Jose Castillo. They kind of overlapped with the Padres. So I guess if you wanted to bring that one up quickly, yeah, he spoke that the stuff is real. He's very excited to bring someone like Castillo on. And yeah, I mean, cool vibes. We have some more Fish Strikes guys here today as fans. So you'll be seeing their perspectives of the game today. And this is fun. Let me see how much I can show, but they spelled my name wrong on this little thing. I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. This is very nice, and I'm excited.
Yeah. With the trade, I guess you were kind of preoccupied to look things up, but this guy, for the audience that isn't aware, he was a very good reliever for the Padres 5 years ago in 2018, and then ever since then, it's just been a constant string of injuries. A lat injury, he had a shoulder injury. In between, he had Tommy John surgery. Even this year, I think it was the shoulder one that slowed things down for Castillo. Even so, he's only 27 years old. He was DFA'd by the Padres last week. So this is the deal that they made, cash considerations to get him off of waivers. But he's a lefty that throws mid-90s, and he's got a really good slider that both gets, I think I have some video that I can show people as well on him. So he does have a minor league option as well. So he's not pitching for the Marlins in this series. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's him from AAA this year. He had made one appearance for the Padres this season, spent most of it with their AAA affiliate down here. He's got power stuff, but he just hasn't accomplished much of anything at the big league level for 5 years. So we will see. I imagine if they made this deal, there's a decent likelihood that he appears in the big leagues at some point, but nothing imminent. And as we've talked about, the Marlins have a bigger need for right-handed relievers, not lefties. So as intriguing as this guy is, and especially now with Andrew Nardi on the precipice of returning, now that he's started a rehab assignment, this guy's mostly just AAA depth.
Yeah, it's just a nice depth arm, I guess you could say, that if they ever need, you get it. So, yeah.
My opinion, his overall numbers and his injury history, it's just one of those that, like, okay, get with Mel, all of a sudden he's going to be great, but you never know with those. He's a bit of a fixer-upper, pretty much. And
the thing is, he's going to go to Jacksonville, so I don't know how much he's going to talk to Mel until if and when he actually gets called up. That's kind of the only flaw with that plan right there. Because I don't think Mel's going to be checking in with him much remotely or in person until he actually gets a shot at the big leagues. But aside from that, any general thoughts on this series you want to convey? You put up an article on our site previewing it about focusing a lot on Edward, and he was awesome in his return from the IL against the Cardinals. But you think it's a pretty big challenge against this Rays lineup?
Yeah, it's probably the best team he's going to face this year with Tampa, and just kind of hope he builds off that Cardinals start. Kind of, just gets ahead of hitters. This is a team that's not only very patient for the most part, but some guys do tend to strike out on high rates, like a Luke Raley, who's around a 30% in Jose series. And you kind of hope that Miami could just, specifically Edward, he just gets the hitters. And you're facing Tyler Glass now. He's good, but if there's something that's going to help Miami, it's his ERA of 3.9 at home. So I guess that's good. But the bad thing is in his last start, he struck out 9 to 1-7 against the Orioles. So we'll see. But, if there's a game that Miami can take, I think it's this one, definitely. And, tomorrow you have Sandy and Zach Eflin.
And why don't you give people, before we let you go, a sneak peek at what interviews you did pregame that people can expect to see?
I spoke to your boy, Hitting Harold. Super cool guy. Very nice. And then I spoke to Yandy, one of the coolest guys I've ever met. And you guys are going to like that one too. Both in Spanish. I'll try to see if I could add some subtitles, but they're both great people, and let's see what tomorrow we could get. I know maybe tomorrow we talk to Randy, so stay tuned for that one tomorrow. And yeah, it's fun 2 days here in Tampa, and I'm very, very excited.
Awesome. We'll let you go. That's Kevin Barrel, as his nameplate says, up in Tropicana Field. So yeah, it's a night game today, early afternoon game tomorrow. Follow him along, Kevin_Barral, and he's gonna have all of your updates over there. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think when I was in Tampa, they spelled my last name with a U.
A U? Where they
B-U-R.
put the I get it. Yeah. That actually seems kind of understandable on it.
That happens a lot.
Right. So I wanted to take just a final thought on some injury updates. The one's not shown here is Avi had his rehab assignment moved to Jacksonville from Pensacola. You would think that at most it's a week away from coming back. He had a couple decent moments for Pensacola so far. And I think the expectation is that when he does come back, he'd be replacing either Dane Myers or Garrett Hampson, one of the two, depending on how the rest of the roster, the rest of the outfield alignment shakes out. With Barnes, that is a season-ending hip surgery that we've touched on. With Max, as he mentions, it was kind of a long shot that he was going to be back anyway by the end of the year. If you heard our State of the Fish show with Craig Mish, even Mish was kind of kept in the dark about the possibility of him coming back this year. It seemed unlikely. And now the fact that he even had to stop his progression for any length of time, I think you could pretty much rule out the idea of Max contributing at the big leagues before the end of the year. And then with Trevor,
that's really concerning for me. The fact that he was on the brink of coming back, and then something happened to his non-throwing shoulder, and now he's still not throwing.
right?
We might not see him again this year.
Yeah, it's a possibility now. It's been a month and a half since he hurt his non-throwing lat, his right lat, and still not clear to throw. Like realistically, if he started throwing tomorrow and did that full ramp up to be a starter, that would have him back like September 1st. That's the absolute best case scenario at this point, September 1st with Trevor. And if there's no imminent sign that he's actually starting that progression, we're just trying to be optimistic. So it just hammers home with Max almost certainly ruled out for the year, with Trevor becoming a little bit more doubtful to come back at all this year. It makes it imperative for the Marlins to add a starter of some kind of regardless of what happens here. Yeah, I understand the skepticism about Avi. I mean, I've been as low on him as anybody. I was somebody that entered this year thinking that that there was really not a whole lot of hope of him being a valuable player. But we'll see.
He's gonna have to earn his spot back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the way that he played out, if he comes back before Jazz does, which it seems like could be the case, like there'll be a little period in between, then Jesus moves to center field, I would think, as the primary guy. But DLC is still going to be in the lineup basically every day. And then in right field, you have Soler. Well, every once in a while, Soler in left field, and that would move on certain days, DLC to right field. Like he's not going to be, there's no chance that he's going to be an everyday starter until he actually produces at a high level for a certain period of time. But yeah, outside of that, now we see John Birdie can even fill in at the corner in outfield spots, and he's been hitting really well. I think John Birdie he's a guy that's been going under the radar, like how good he has been. After like a not so special start to the season, he's second on the team. He's getting more hits than DLC. He's getting more hits than anybody not named Arise. John Birdie is hitting 292 this year. I don't know if people realize that.
So since the All-Star break, in his 7 games since the All-Star break, he's gone 10 for 18, which is a 556 average, including back-to-back 3-hit games on the 18th and 19th, and has hit safely in 13 of his last 18 starts, including 7 multi-hit games. That's nuts. Those are Luis Arias numbers.
He'll continue to be in the lineup just about every day at one position or another. Yeah, in terms of what they can do, I know Craig still keeps out hope that they can do some sort of bad contract swap. But at this point, the contract is even more underwater than it was at this time a year ago, unfortunately, just because he's further removed from showing that he can do anything at the big league level now because of an injury, more so than extended struggles at the big league level. Yeah, I think we touched on the Castillo trade enough. That's a guy that we may see at some point, but he's not a high priority. And the Marlins kind of made that move. Before going to the break, I'll give people a peek at where we are with the 40-man roster situation at the moment. The reason why they made that deal is because they had a vacancy on the 40-man. And now it is filled up once again. We'll make it even bigger and put us to the side.
It's filled up, but they also have players that can be moved to the 60-day to make another spot. Like Matt Barnes can go to the 60-day to make some room if they need to. Sixto Sanchez, I don't know what he's still doing there. He's been there. I don't know. His name is there, but I don't really think he exists anymore. Right. So they can move him to the 60-day or somewhere else that's not taking up a spot for another man on the 40-man. But yeah, they have some flexibility with the 40-man.
Yes. And I mean, honestly, even with Garrett Hampson, he's been on the big league roster a lot of this year, but it speaks volumes that he barely plays. Like if they were to DFA Hampson, I don't think he'd be claimed. I think that's another guy. Well, actually, that's a guy that can at least opt out of become a free agent if he wanted to. So that's a slightly different story. But just going through this, Castillo is kind of where you start, where honestly, I think when they made this deal, they probably have it in their mind that if they DFA him at the right time, that he'll go unclaimed, and they just keep him at AAA for as long as they need him to as well. So with Barnes being the obvious one, they'll put him on the 60-day. That's going to be probably the first corresponding move they make whenever they need that spot. And outside of that, With Sixto, there's just been no seemingly no appetite to get him out of the way. But at a certain point, when you're in this race as deep of the year as you're in it, you have to eventually make some relatively tough decisions like that. And for him to in any way get in the way of them putting together the best possible roster, making the kind of deadline moves that they want to, I can't imagine that at all. Yes, and Sharif saying in here, he's one of our brand new super subscribers. He's been with us for so much of this year on our spaces as well as our streams, so we appreciate your support there. Talking about all the stuff that we do on here. Yeah, outside of that, Avi coming back soon, Nardi coming back soon, Jazz not all that far behind.
They could possibly bring Xavier Edwards back up within the next few weeks. You never know with him.
Yeah. Craig mentioned that as a strong possibility that he would get another chance soon. The question is how exactly you use him, because his primary positions are second base and center field, and they're soon going to get their own center fielder back. And at second base, that's the one position where they don't really need help. Yeah, before we go to break, I do want to hammer home something about this team and heading into the deadline, where the focus, I'd say that the easy suggestion to make is that they acquire more pitching, both in the bullpen and in the rotation. The offense is still a problem. Like, this still is a well below average offense. This is an offense that's just scored 2 runs a game against the Rockies at home, against the depleted Rockies. The reason why it's difficult to figure out what to do with that offense and how to upgrade it is because they have a lot of major league players. The thing is, they have a lot of bodies that kind of belong in the big leagues. It's just that outside of Arise, who is an excellent second baseman, outside of Soler, who is a very good DH and occasional corner outfielder, you go all around the rest of the team, and if you're being honest, they are at best average, in most cases slightly below average at all those other positions. DLC, as much as it's been an encouraging year for him, you just look at him and you compare him to other corner outfielders, and it's not quite enough power. It's not quite enough plate discipline. It's not enough defense, and it's not enough base running. So that's a guy where he's helping the team a little bit, but that's a position where there are a lot of better players out there at that spot. You can say the exact same thing, obviously, at third base. You could say it at first base as well. The Cooper-Gurriel combo has been interesting, but there's not enough power there, and there's not enough patience there either. It's where you go all across this team at shortstop, especially at catcher, especially at third base, and then even in right field. That's probably one of their strongest positions at the moment. I mean, Sanchez, all things considered, having a pretty good year. But you compare it to other playoff caliber teams, and they're just on the margins. They're losing value at each of these positions relative to their competition. And when you add it all together, you combine it together, it's a well below average offensive team that doesn't have quite enough power, that doesn't have quite enough base running, that has enough contact hitting. And that's kind of really the only saving grace, is that they put the bat on the ball.
They put the bat on the ball, and then the ball goes straight to the shortstop for a 6-4-3 double play, which is plaguing all of our nightmares.
Right.
With another thing about the offense is, if your offense is only scoring like 2 runs a game, you're not doing your bullpen or your starters any favors. If the Marlins score 2 more runs in any of those first 2 games against the Rockies, they win those games.
Right.
If they score another, and they haven't gone down like quietly, but they haven't been able to push across that final run. Those extra runs. They haven't been able to get those extra runs like they were in the beginning of the season and in the middle of the season. Now we're getting towards the back end of the season, and those runs just aren't coming, and that's a problem.
The stolen base storyline has been really bizarre, where Jazz is the one that seals at a high volume, and Birdie, he's been doing it a little more lately, but overall is still far behind the pace that he had last year when he obviously led the majors in that category.
He was dealing with an injury throughout most of this. He's been dealing with an injury throughout most of the season.
Do we have more specifics on what we think that injury could have been? But
lower body. That's all I got.
Yeah. And usually that's kind of that's not all that surprising that there was something holding him back from doing it. But they needed him they could have really, I should say, they could have really used that element of his game, because that keeps you at a double plays when you have so many guys that hit the ball on the ground. And it's a lot easier to manipulate, to use your bat control as a weapon if defense has to constantly cover second base. They're out of positions. You do hit and runs, like that stuff. That would make a marginal difference on what's holding them back as an offense. To this point in the season. And it is, we'll see exactly like how much the batting order can come into play and how much simply moving these guys around could have value. If you have, now that Birdie is perhaps as healthy as he has been, moving him up in the order and exactly what they do with Jazz when he gets back. When I think he got back the previous time and they put him right in the leadoff spot again. So that'll be an interesting storyline to follow. Let's just hope he still is a few steps away from getting back. So it's, for this week at least, it looks like they're still going to be Jazzless and have to get through that. Yeah, to me, the guys that I've had circled for the offensive upgrades, the easiest one would be third base, either Jeimer Candelario, or if they can somehow match up with the Reds on Jonathan India, play India at third base. That's a position that he mainly played.
Another second baseman playing out of position.
He played plenty of third base earlier, I think, in college and then in the minors as well before moving to second. That's an interesting one, but Candelario is the one where it seems so obvious, but sometimes the obvious move is the right move. And as a pending free agent, he should be available. At the same time, he should be available at a price that the Marlins have the prospect capital to make that move. And he's been playing just as well recently as he has all season. So they're getting somebody that's still relatively hot at the top of their game, who's a switch hitter as well. But we'll take a very quick break right here, hear from our friends at La Pop. And we'll be back on the other side to focus a little bit more on this upcoming series and some other miscellaneous topics. And we want to get all of your questions as well in the chat. So keep sending those in.
All right. So now that we're back after the break, we got the Tampa Bay Rays for 2 in Tropicana Field, which has never been a fun place for the Marlins to play. The Marlins have lost, 11 of their last 13 games against the...
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. I will put that up on the screen for people to see. The recent history of these two teams, the lopsided rivalry. This is going back to 2019. Between these teams. In 2018, the Marlins actually won the season series, but ever since then, I believe they've lost, is it 18 out of 20 that they've lost? They've won once in 2020, and they won once. They salvaged that final game of the opening series in 2021, and that is it. They've lost every other head-to-head game against the Rays, and it's more so just been a matter of not scoring runs whatsoever in these games. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shutouts. They've been shut out 7 times in that 20-game span.
Wow.
I can't believe that as I'm reading that, but it must be true. It is from StatHead. It must be true. So that's been the main issue. They've been shut down by these opposing pitchers. And that's probably going to be the main concern these next 2 days as well, facing Tyler Glass now, who is I guess you could say, the nominal ace of this team. And then Zach Eflin in the second game, who is the actual ace of this team. He's been under the radar. He's been their best, most valuable pitcher to this point in the season by a pretty wide margin. So that you worry about history repeating itself in terms of struggling to score in the Citrus series.
Yeah, this would be a series where the bats need to wake up or else. Looking at the lineups for today, it's a little bit weird fielding positioning for the Marlins because there's a little bit of a bug going around the clubhouse. That's why Cooper was scratched on Sunday and then ended up playing after taking some Tylenol. Arias was really not feeling well on Sunday and was honestly surprised that he played. And of course, he does that. He had that performance that he did on Sunday. So be interesting to see what he does when he's fully healthy. So you got Arias, of course, at second, the usual suspects. Soler's at DH, Cooper's at first. Jesus Sanchez is playing center field. Dane Myers is dealing with something. I think it's that same bug. Brian De La Cruz is over in right field. I don't know how many times he started in right field this year, but it's not many.
For most of the year, he was exclusively left field, and I hadn't really noticed that until we got very deep into the year with him. And in my opinion, he's just been bad defensively, unfortunately. And as Navi brings up with Soler, early in the season, that seemed like somewhat of a storyline that Soler didn't want to DH at Lone Depot due to the partially artificial surface.
He still does. He still doesn't do back-to-back games in the field at Lone Depot. That's something that Skip has been very clear on. Soler does not do back-to-back games on turf.
Yeah. So perhaps, at best case scenario, maybe he plays tomorrow's game on this turf. Either way, he's played as the season has gone on. It's been slightly higher outfield usage from him than previously, but still vast majority of the time being in the DH spot as he is today. And
he was supposed to play right field on Sunday, and he ended up when Cooper got scratched, Soler became the DH, and Jesus Sanchez went over to right field. So he was gonna play right field on Sunday, but didn't because Cooper was scratched.
Right.
You of course got Jeet Segura at third base, Joey Wendell at shortstop, Stallings behind the plate. He's caught every one of Cabrera's starts this season, and John Birdie, who has been hitting the cover off the baseball lately, over at left field.
Right. And as you mentioned, with Birdie hitting cover off the baseball lately, maybe we're not all that far away from them making a bold step of putting him near the top of the lineup on one of these occasions. I mean, Soler, since the break, and really going back a little bit further, he hasn't been especially hot. I mean, the home runs have mostly disappeared from him. He's still been a decent overall hitter for them. But Birdie playing the way that he does, and the difference between bearing him ninth in the lineup versus having him, say, second behind Arias, that costs him almost one plate appearance every single game. So, when do you think we get to the point? How much does Birdie have to do to make them reconsider Soler in the 2 spot and perhaps go up top there and bump everybody down a peg?
I think it would have to be a change in philosophy from Skip. It would have to, because he always talks about lengthening the lineup, having guys at the bottom of the lineup that can get things going, and it has worked. Birdie was Sunday. Birdie came around to score on Arias' first RBI, and getting the bases loaded for Arias is helpful. When you have guys getting on base ahead of Arias. One thing I did just realize, and Jordan pointed this out on Twitter, this is Joey Wendell's first time playing at the Trop since being traded to the Marlins. Last year he missed the trip because he was down with his with the hamstring injury. So this is Joey Wendell's revenge series.
Yeah, I do remember that now. It jogs my memory about the storylines of him coming back, and that he wasn't available for that one. And now he returns as the primary shortstop for a playoff contender. Yeah. Outside of that, let me go quickly to the Rays side, see if there's anything that catches our attention here. It's a lot of red. It's not as much as some of the other teams the Marlins have played recently. Yandy is the one that really jumps out, and Arozarena in the middle there. Luke Raley is, I think, any team that's playing the Rays for the first time immediately needs to give credit to. Raley is one of the more shocking developments in all of baseball this year. He doesn't play every single day, but I think he starts against just about every right-handed pitcher, and he has been an awesome slugger. I think he on a per plate appearance basis, he has as much power as home run power as anybody in this lineup for them. So he is a high strikeout. He has a big strikeout issue as well. This is a Rays team that, as you see in several spots, they have great contact hitting, and then Raley doesn't fit that profile. Yet he does plenty in other aspects of his game that he's been a shockingly good piece for them. And it's really not a shock, though, because the Rays do this with somebody almost every single year.
One thing I do notice with the Rays lineup is that everybody there is a qualified hitter, which means they've had a consistent lineup, consistent guys throughout the season. They haven't really dealt with many injuries, although they have had some injuries, but it's been more on the pitching side.
Right.
They've been able to run out a similar lineup almost every day, top to bottom, which is good for a team to have consistency like that. With the Marlins, there are a bunch of guys that aren't qualified.
Right. That's a great point. I had not thought of that one. They have had, yeah, I guess it's really pretty extreme on the pitching side, though. On the pitching side, the majority of their rotation has been wiped out due to injury. Entering this season, they were expecting very big things from Jeffrey Springs, from Drew Rasmussen, and both of them, their elbows blew out, unfortunately. So, yeah, at the moment, they still have a very strong top three on the pitching side with Eflin.
They have 6 players on the 60-day IL, and they're all pitchers.
Yep, that sums it up pretty well. Yeah, the top three of the rotation, though, is still intact and still probably almost in the conversation of one of the best top threes you can put together between McClanahan, Glasnow, and the way that Eflin is pitching this year. As I alluded to before, Eflin has been their most valuable pitcher overall. Like him and McClanahan, they're kind of neck and neck in that category, but it's been Eflin that's eating a little bit more innings. That walk rate for a starting pitcher is like just jaw-droppingly low, just 3.6%. So he's been efficient, and he was one of the few guys in their team's history where they've given a multi-year contract to a starting pitcher. They don't do that, and it shows you that they saw that Eflin he could be slightly better than he showed during his many years with the Phillies. And if he stays on this pace, it's going to be a career year for a guy that we thought we already knew exactly what we were getting, and yet they have brought out the best in him.
Yeah, the Rays are always scary, no matter what.
Yeah, on the hitting side, Isaac Paredes, he's the 22 version of Luke Raley. He was the one that kind of was undervalued by the Tigers. And this year, 18 home runs and barely half a season of playing time. And he has sustained those gains that he had from the previous year. The thing is, with the Rays, they got off to the historic start to the season. They were the talk of baseball throughout all of April, and now they're not even leading their division anymore. They just had a huge series against the Orioles over the weekend, and the Orioles leapfrogged them in the standings. It's been an extended stretch for the Rays where 19 games over 500, and they got almost all those games in April. Pretty much since then, they are not performing all that much better than the Marlins are, even though the overall stats are still really impressive. And even though they do have star power on both sides of the ball, do you still see this team as one of the best teams in baseball, or should we actually adjust to kind of what they've been doing now for a 3-month period of just meandering around 500?
I think you have to. If you want to win games, you have to always see your opponent as being better than you, so you play up to their level. But no, this team is not really looking that good, and this could be an opportunity for the Marlins to take 2 games and really just put themselves in the conversation for the playoffs more so than they are now. And really, that would be a huge morale boost after the 8-game losing skid. Coming in and taking 2 from the Rays in Tropicana Field, a place where you haven't won in what seems like forever. It'd be huge. And not only do you have these 2 games against the Rays, now the Rays come to town in a couple weeks. So you've got 4 games coming up against the Rays. So if you want to really give yourself some breathing room, you might want to put some emphasis on these games.
As LMF pointed out, these are the two of the coldest teams in the entire league since the break.
Somebody has to win.
Yeah. Now, part of that, as I mentioned, the Rays just played the Orioles, and that is arguably the toughest team that they could face at the moment. So the quality of competition, it's more understandable with the Rays why they have struggled in this limited period of time, because playing not just the Orioles, but the rest of their division, every single team they face in the AL East puts up a decent fight. That it's been one of the more competitive divisions in recent memory for any single season, with all those teams very comfortably above 500 and all of them kind of still aspiring to be buyers at this stage of the season. Aside from that, I guess we should just check in quickly on what's going on with the trade market so far,
Yeah.
because people are getting a little bit antsy naturally for the Marlins to do something. And to this point, there's not a whole lot going on from either team. Yeah, I put this together. I think this sums up the transactions that have actually taken place over the last week or so. The first shoe to drop, I guess, was Fujinami going to the Orioles. And then more recently, Janice Cabrera to the Blue Jays. All relievers. And then just before we started recording, all but done the move sending Kike Hernandez back to the Dodgers. A former Marlin for a brief period of time as well. Certainly had a ton of success with the Dodgers, especially in the postseason. I don't know if people realize how much he's struggling this year. Kike, he's been one of the least valuable players in all baseball due to a combination of his defense and his power kind of disappearing as well. He has been the Red Sox Gene Segura. So imagine if the Marlins were able to deal Gene Segura and get something in return, get anything in return. It would be unlikely, but because of Kike, because of he's going to a team that knows him so well, and also because he can play up the middle defensive positions, that makes somewhat of a difference, even though he's not playing those positions well. Like, that was the deal that's gotten the most attention so far, but ultimately might not move the needle just because he's been struggling so much in 2023.
Yeah, when the Marlins were up in Boston, I got to see firsthand the calamity that is right now the Red Sox infield. And Kike was pretty much patient zero in that whole situation. There was not a single ground ball fielded by Kike in that series that didn't make you go, ugh, because it just didn't look good. So I'm actually kind of surprised that the Red Sox got anything back for him with the season he's having.
Yeah, two minor leaguers that I didn't recognize. And it's part of a move where it just creates room for Trevor Story. People forget about Trevor Story, but he is apparently coming back from his Tommy John surgery soon, like probably next week and a half. So he'll be up the middle for them. And they have no idea what they're getting from him because he's been gone for so long and he was struggling even before that. But I guess they feel that even that is preferable to keeping Kike around, given the way that he has struggled himself so far this year. We touched on Castillo earlier in the show. Somebody that could be sort of interesting, but he's not somebody that's going to be plugged into the bullpen right away. I don't think he's going to preclude them from actually getting a more reputable reliever, especially from the right side. But for the moment,
I see today's move more as a, like, we have the room.
Yeah.
This guy just became available. He was DFA'd by the Padres. Let's grab him, see what we can do with him. But if not, we could just get rid of him. That's how I see today's move.
Yeah. They call him Big Dude. Jose Big Dude Castillo, listed at 6'6", 252 pounds.
Okay, yeah, the name fits.
Yeah, something like that. But with about how many minutes? 22 minutes to first pitch, and about 12 minutes to where we normally end the show. I think we're going to go straight into prediction time and take it leisurely from there. So let me find my video for that.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
2-game series. 2 games. Need to remind people that before they send in their predictions, and even just remind Noah himself, remind everybody, only 2 games instead of the usual 3. One of a small number of 2-game series on the schedule this year. As usual, we incorporate our super subscriber predictions as well. So these were those that I saw right before we started on the show. A big mixed bag in here. About half of it's pretty much split down the middle between series splits and the Marlins sweeping and the Rays sweeping. I was a little inconsistent with my abbreviations. I put a TBR in there instead of a TB, but you get the idea. So it's pretty all over the map with these possibilities for what direction the series could go. And that's what we have so far. Still some time. If you are a super subscriber and you're in our Twitter circle, you just check our pinned tweet on the Fish on First account to leave your prediction in there. And we always encourage more people to become super subscribers. If you just go to fishonfirst.com, that link is right near the very top of the page for you to sign up and get involved in there.
We really need to get someone from the team to record a "This is prediction time" video for so we can have something cool like that. I'll get on that.
Yeah, and so I will add Sharif's prediction to our board as well, with the Marlins winning both games over the Rays. And we do have, as we said, we have Kevin covering from the ballpark. We have Isaac attending as a fan. And I think Isaac just tagged me on Twitter because they have a big picture of Harold Ramirez set up. I should have included that before prediction time, talking about Harold and checking in on how he is doing. Yeah, one of my favorite players in baseball, Harold Ramirez. This is now his second season with the Rays. He was pretty good last year. This year got off to an even better start. The only reason why I'm not predicting him for my series MVP is because he's not going to be in the lineup for both of these games, as I figured he's kind of a platoon player. They start him against lefties, and with the Marlins having Edward and Sandy on the mound, I wasn't expecting him to be playing complete games in either of those two. But he's having a good year. He's saying 282, about 15% better than league average by WRC plus. And yeah, we do have Sean making the not a smart pick, but I have to respect his MVP pick of Harold because of that, even though I'm not going with him myself in that situations. Well, let me get.
So do we have the videos queued up for Kevin and Isaac?
Let's go first to Isaac and Bella, the two of them going as fans.
Bella cameo.
Yeah, they made a pretty brief one on their drive up from Miami.
Live from Tampa, the Miami Marlins will get swept in this 2-game series, and Yandy Diaz will be MVP. Bella?
I think they split the series, and Jesus Sanchez will win MVP, haunting his former team.
All right.
I forgot Jesus Sanchez played for the Rays, and also they flew up yesterday. They didn't drive up from Miami.
Yeah, he didn't play in the majors for them. He was in their farm system, of course, and he was one of their more highly rated prospects when they made that trade at the deadline 4 years ago. It's almost the 4-year anniversary of the Jesus Sanchez trade, and he was highly regarded in their system. He's played them since then, so it's not like their first rivalry matchup. It's not the same vibes as the Joey Wendell return to Tropicana. Also, from the field, we have Kevin credentialed for this one, as well as some of his friends in the Marlins media. So here's what they think about this 2-game set.
All right, Marlins versus Rays, 2 games. Alex Aguirre's prediction is Marlins split, and Edward Cabrera is the MVP. Andres, you're up.
I think the Marlins win this series 2-0 actually, and because it's no other way, like it should be like 2-0, right? And my MVP it's gonna be Luis Arraez.
I'm going Marlins split, and my MVP is going to be Mr. Sandy Alcantara.
I'm going with that Marlins split 1-1. We win today. They take tomorrow. I'm going with John Birdie as my MVP, taking 2 bags today, 2 bags of series.
And I also have a Marlins split. And I have Jesus Sanchez MVP against his former organization. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, Eli, back to you.
And a good summary from John Rodriguez about former guys that played for both the Rays and the Marlins in here.
Oh, Jaguar.
Jaguar, yep. That's a good one. Charles Johnson. I had forgotten that Charles Johnson played for the Rays. Did you really?
I believe anything John Rodriguez says. So
yeah, in 2005, 19 games, he had 196 at the very end of his career.
Wow.
I had not remembered that. No, it's a good plug in there. So let me get our music queued up. There we go. Let me take. Series, your predictions, sir.
So it's not going to be what I texted you earlier. I am going to go with a split, and I'm going to go with Joey Wendell against his former team in his return to Tropicana Field.
In my prediction, I always go series split when it's an even number of games. 1 win each for the Marlins and the Rays. A popular pick so far. I am also riding with Jesus Sanchez as the MVP. I think he's going to do some more slugging against his former team. Really think he's locked in at the moment, and he's going to be so crucial to this Marlins offense for the foreseeable future. I would have stopped the music sooner, but when there's so few of us, there's a lot of buttons I have to press. So I don't mind having it go on a little longer than usual.
All right. I think that's it from us.
Yeah, that will be it. I'm signing off a little bit early on here. We have 2 more streams coming up this week. We have Jeopardy on Thursday, the kids version, the young experts version. Only teenagers competing on that show, but showing their Marlins historical knowledge. That'll be a fun one. So that's Thursday at 7 on the off day. And then we're back on Friday for pretty highly anticipated series, the homecoming, the final homecoming of Miguel Cabrera as a major league player coming back to South Florida with the Tigers. So we'll be previewing that one, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time in our usual time slot. One of the final easy series that the Marlins play before their quality of competition really goes through the roof the rest of August. So that will be, there'll be a whole lot of attention on that, fond memories, but also urgency to win that. So we appreciate you guys following along. You can watch all that stuff, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Noah Berger, Eli Sussman here for Fish on First Live. So enjoy this brief series, and you'll hear from us soon. Thanks a lot for supporting all we do, and go Fish.